The evening began like any other at Belmonts, a high-end restaurant in the heart of the city. Ornate chandeliers cast a warm glow on polished tables and pristine white linens. Soft jazz music played in the background, mingling with the low hum of polite conversation. For outsiders, Belmonts seemed like the perfect place to celebrate a milestone or simply indulge in a luxurious night out. Clarice Cole stepped inside at precisely 7 o'clock, armed with a confirmed reservation. She carried herself with quiet confidence, a poised black woman in a classic navy dress, exuding an air of professionalism. The hostess, a young woman with a warm smile, led Clarice toward a table near the center of the dining room, a spot that offered a clear view of the restaurant's sweeping windows. At first, nothing seemed amiss. Waiters bustled around, guiding guests to their seats with impeccable politeness. Yet Clarice noticed subtle details, hushed whispers behind the reception podium and a few servers exchanging uneasy glances. It was as though an invisible tension had settled over Belmonts. Still, Clarice let it go, chalking it up to the typical nerves of a busy dinner service. She settled into her seat, ready to enjoy the evening. But in a corner of the room, someone else had taken notice of her arrival, and he wasn't at all pleased. That someone was Travis Howe, Belmont's manager. Known for his immaculate suits and rigid personality, Travis prided himself on keeping Belmonts exclusive. He was the gatekeeper who decided which guests deserved the best tables and which ones could be shunted aside. From behind the sleek podium near the bar, Travis observed Clarice with narrowed eyes. He scanned the rest of the dining room, mentally calculating future seating arrangements. He believed the restaurant thrived on a particular image, one that he personally curated. Whenever a high-profile guest called in last minute or an influential patron strolled through the doors, Travis worked his magic, bumping off certain diners without them even realizing it. But Clarice noticed everything. Even as she studied the menu, she saw Travis whisper something to a waiter, who looked visibly uncomfortable. Within minutes, the waiter approached her table, apologizing for the inconvenience and saying another guest needed her spot. Confused, Clarice simply shook her head. She had a legitimate reservation and had arrived right on time. Why was she being singled out? Travis, prepared for mild protests, strode over in a calculated display of authority. He forced a tight smile, the kind that never reaches the eyes. "Good evening," he said, as though nothing were amiss. But his tone hinted he wasn't really there to offer a greeting. "Good evening," Clarice replied. "Is there a problem?" He cleared his throat. "I'm afraid we need this table for a special reservation. We can move you to a more suitable spot in the back, near the kitchen." Clarice's brows creased. "I'm sorry, but I booked this reservation days ago. Why do I need to move now?" Travis clasped his hands, masking his irritation behind polished politeness. "We appreciate your understanding, Ms. Cole. We've had a last-minute VIP request, and we must ensure everything is perfect for them." His words sounded so rehearsed that Clarice immediately sensed something deeper at play. "I'm curious, why do I have to give up my seat? This is the table I reserved." Travis stiffened at her direct question. He was used to people quietly accepting his demands. "I'm simply following policy," he insisted, voice clipped. "We prioritize certain clients." A subtle hush spread across the nearest tables. People pretended not to listen, but it was clear heads were turning, ears perking up, to catch every word. Clarice's gaze didn't waver. "I respect your rules," she said softly, "but I'm not leaving this table." The manager's demeanor shifted. His polite facade thinned, revealing frustration. "If you insist on making a scene, we'll have to involve security. Belmonts reserves the right to seat customers in a manner that preserves the restaurant's atmosphere." "Are you threatening me?" she asked, calmly but firmly. A tension swirled in the air. Diners nearby exchanged uneasy looks as the standoff unfolded. Travis leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Ma'am, don't make this more complicated than it needs to be." She arched an eyebrow. "I'd like to see how complicated it can get," she said, refusing to budge. And for the first time that evening, Travis realized Clarice Cole wasn't going to be pushed around so easily. Faced with Clarice's unwavering composure, Travis decided to escalate matters. He discreetly signaled 2 security guards stationed near the entrance, men more accustomed to breaking up rowdy brawls than dealing with a poised woman who simply wanted to enjoy her dinner. The guards approached on cue. Travis quickly explained the situation in hushed tones, painting Clarice as an uncooperative guest. Then, addressing her in a louder voice for the sake of onlookers, he declared, "We have to maintain our quality standards here. If you decline to move, we must ask you to leave the premises." Clarice stood up slowly, locking eyes with Travis. The entire restaurant fell into an uneasy hush. Even the bartender paused in mid-shake, glancing over his shoulder to see what would happen next. "And what quality standards are those?" Clarice asked. "Is it about me personally? Or is there something else at work here?" Travis's frustration peaked, and he let slip a remark that made nearby diners gasp. "People like you," he muttered, "often have trouble following policy." An older couple at the next table exchanged appalled looks, realizing exactly what he implied. At that moment, the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Clarice took a step closer, meeting Travis's glare with quiet fury. "Tell me what that means," she challenged. Travis realized too late that he'd gone too far. He swallowed, forcing a stiff response. "All I meant was, some guests don't match the environment we aim to uphold. We're not obligated to serve everyone." The security guard shifted uncomfortably, suddenly unsure if they wanted to back him up. After all, what if Clarice was right, and they were about to throw out a paying customer on purely biased grounds? Still, Travis pressed forward, ordering the guards to escort Clarice out. But Clarice calmly raised a hand. "Hold on," she said. "Let me make a phone call first." Travis rolled his eyes, turning to the guards. "She's stalling." Clarice tapped a number on her phone, speaking softly. She stepped aside, away from the table, but not out of earshot. "Hello." "Yes, it's me. I need you to hear what's happening." Travis looked incredulous. He'd seen countless guests try to call a friend in some ill-advised attempt to intimidate him. It never worked. So, he stood there, arms folded, a mocking smile on his lips. "Go ahead," he told her. "I doubt whoever's on the other end can change how Belmonts operates." When Clarice finished her brief conversation, she ended the call with a calm, "You might want to get here soon," and returned to her table. Travis beckoned the guards. "All right, that's enough. We're done here. Please escort her out." One guard reached for Clarice's arm, but she fixed him with a resolute stare. "Touch me, and you might regret it," she said, not in anger, but with cool certainty. A sudden ring sliced through the tension. Travis's phone. He glanced at the screen, and his smirk vanished. The caller ID flashed the name he least expected, Christopher Gray, the owner of Belmonts. Travis hesitated, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. Slowly, he answered. "Hello?" His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Yes, Mr. Gray, I can explain." "Wait, you're..." He stopped mid-sentence, eyes darting toward Clarice. The color drained from his face as Mr. Gray's angry tone blared through the receiver. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, diners straining to catch fragments of the tense conversation. "You spoke to the owner?" Travis finally managed, voice cracking. Clarice shrugged. "Is that a problem?" With Travis out of the picture, for the moment, Christopher Gray wasted no time investigating. Clarice, refusing to let the issue slide, offered to speak with the staff and other customers. What began as a single complaint soon exposed a pattern of discriminatory treatment. Over the coming days, hostesses admitted that Travis had made them seat black patrons near the kitchen or out of view. One former waiter revealed that Travis would gently discourage certain guests from returning, claiming the restaurant was always fully booked when they called. Sifting through Belmont's reservation logs, Clarice unearthed a string of cancelled bookings, all suspiciously linked to Travis's direct interference. The deeper everyone dug, the more stories emerged. Rumors surfaced that Travis had been let go from a previous job for similar reasons, though he'd carefully concealed that detail during the hiring process. Staff members were furious. They'd followed Travis's orders under the guise of upholding restaurant standards, never realizing how blatantly discriminatory he was. Some confessed they'd considered quitting but feared retribution for speaking out. When word reached former patrons, a few came forward to share their experiences. One recalled being asked to leave mid-meal due to a mix-up, while another recounted how Travis snapped at her for requesting a window seat above her station. It was a scandal that rocked Belmonts to its core. The media got wind of the controversy, and local blogs were flooded with speculation. Had the restaurant harbored a toxic culture all along, or was Travis simply a rogue manager? In the aftermath, Christopher Gray took decisive steps to rebuild Belmont's reputation and its soul. He fired Travis outright, issued a public apology, and began extensive equity and inclusion training for all staff. An anonymous hotline was set up so employees and patrons could safely report any misconduct. Internally, Gray tasked Clarice with helping streamline changes, compensating her for her time and insight. Soon, testimonies poured in, from staff grateful to see a shift in Belmont's culture, from customers who noticed a friendlier, more transparent atmosphere. The restaurant's clientele evolved, new faces arrived, drawn by the fresh aura of openness, while longtime regulars breathed a sigh of relief that the place they loved was finally free of hidden prejudice. Weeks later, Clarice stepped into Belmont's again, this time as a welcome guest. Gone were the suspicious stares and subtle tension. The new manager, handpicked by Gray, greeted her with genuine warmth, showing her to a window table with a panoramic view of the city. That evening, laughter, conversation, and music wove together, bringing Belmonts to life in a way Clarice had never felt before. At the end of her meal, Christopher Gray found her. "I just wanted to say," he began, "none of this would have changed if you hadn't refused to be pushed out that night. You sparked something bigger than either of us expected." Clarice smiled. "Sometimes, standing up for yourself is enough to make people realize what's really going on. I'm just glad you acted on it." She left Belmont's with a sense of closure, knowing that one phone call had toppled years of quiet discrimination. By refusing to remain silent, Clarice had forced everyone, staff, ownership, and customers alike, to confront the restaurant's failings and chart a new path. It was a potent reminder that every voice matters and that change, however incremental, always starts with the courage of one determined person. In the end, Belmont's became more than just a fancy dining spot. It evolved into a place that welcomed all who walked through its doors, no reservations about who deserves the best seats. And for anyone who wondered whether calling out injustice actually makes a difference, Clarice Cole was living proof that a single act of defiance can uproot even the most entrenched biases. By the time Christopher Gray finished updating the restaurant's policies, Belmont stood as a beacon of how quickly things can turn around when just one voice refuses to be ignored.